Thank all of you for making it to our first panel and braving the strict security lines that we've had to deal with this morning. I'm Gus Lopez. I helped create the Star Wars collecting track for the first celebration. We've done this now at all 12 celebration events in 4 different countries now. We're very excited about doing this, and this is really truly put on by fans and collectors for the community. And so what we try to do when we select our panels and other activities is really mix it up, and I'm really excited. We have a lot of really good new talks and panels that we're introducing with this celebration, and we're also going to bring back some old favorites. But I'm going to kind of walk through a little bit of what to expect. So some of you have done this many times before, some of you might be your first celebration. What happens, we usually have a lineup right before the panel. What we've found is if you're here even 15, 10 minutes before a panel, on most panels you're able to get in. Some panels more popular than others, we can have a really long line. But when we're done with the panel, you can exit and line up for the next panel, and usually people get into the next panel. We have presenters that are kind of covering a whole range of topics, and time permitting, we'll have time also for questions from the audience. And afterwards, the panelists will be available in our social area. So we have this room 305, which I'll mention a bit more later, about where you can meet other collectors and talk to the panelists and ask questions one-on-one. So if you want to kind of get into more detailed discussion with any of the panelists, we're going to be doing that for all the panels that we have planned. Also, as you exit, we have pretty cool swag to give out. So the collecting track really probably was the first, or one of the first, to really start this tradition of swag that's now a huge thing in the collecting community, where collectors and fans give out things to each other. It's a great way to kind of break the ice and meet other people. And we've been doing this for the collecting tracks since Celebration 3. And so we're excited that we have a set of Return of the Jedi Star Tots, one different one for every panel, so 20 different ones. And you'll get those as you exit from in the back door at the end of the panel. So all you have to do is show your badge, and one of the volunteers will give you a Star Tot. And basically, if we have extras, we miss panels, we don't expect everybody goes to every panel. On the last day, Sunday at 5, we'll give out the extras. We usually have extras of all the different Star Tots. So it's a pretty cool set, so I encourage you to try to get as many as you can. Other things I want to say is, there are many people that make this possible. So the sponsorship, so all the giveaways we have, the Star Tots, those, we raise tens of thousands of dollars from other collectors who put their money in to really provide this for the community. So this isn't, corporate sponsored, nothing like that. It's actually the fans putting in their money to support this. And then there are a bunch of volunteers. You'll see them in the gray shirts. They're helping out all throughout Celebration, really running this room and making sure everything goes smoothly. So they put in a ton of work. And of course, our panelists who, really bring us these great topics and spend a lot of time prepping for Celebration, who are experts really in their field. The last thing I want to mention is the social area. So I mentioned room 305. We've been doing this the last few celebrations, and the idea here is we have one area where you can go we have scheduled events there. So we have things like pin trading, patch trading, meet local collecting clubs, book signings by authors, different meet and greets by different Facebook groups, Star Tot trading, or just go there to hang out with other collectors. One of the things that we hear about at every celebration from collectors who are first-timers is that I went to Celebration, I went to all these panels, but I didn't meet any other collectors. And, I get why that's hard. It's like, some people, it's really hard to kind of break the ice with somebody you don't know, and we try to make that easy for you, because you can say, hey, which Star Tots were you able to get? Or, what panels were you able to attend? And I absolutely encourage you to try to kind of break the ice with other collectors, because there are a lot of informal networks among collectors, and to get plugged in with other collectors is really a valuable experience. So even if you're a shy person and you're reluctant to do that, the social area is a great place to go meet other collectors. So I encourage you to do that. So room 305 is just around the corner. It's going to be open the whole time that we're running the collecting track. And if you're sitting out a panel or waiting between panels, you can go hang out there. So without further ado, I want to introduce our first panelists. Matthew Fox and Jake Stevens. And they're presenting really an topic. They're looking at 4 decades of Star Wars collectibles chronologically and really showing the rich, vast world of Star Wars collecting and Star Wars collecting culture and marketing. So please welcome Jake and Matthew.
Hello, hello, hello. All right, we're good. My name's Jake Stevens, like Gus says. Thank you for the introduction, Gus. Yeah, we're here to talk about not only 4 decades of Star Wars toys, but how they've been sold to us, how that has evolved and changed over these 40 years.
Absolutely, and I want to thank everybody for coming out and making this maybe your first stop in celebration. Braving the security lines and coming on up, so.
All right, well, here we go.
Now, as Gus said, Star Wars has been around for 4 decades. That's a long time. It has evolved more probably than any other property over that time. Or any sort of similar thing. It began as just another movie of the 70s. It became a cultural phenomenon. Then it became, as the sequels came out, it became more institutionalized. It sort of went away for a while and came back. And now it really is just sort of part of culture, which is for something that just began as a movie of the 70s. There is no comparable, there's nothing else, remotely similar. And throughout that time, as you can see, we've sort of broken it down into eras as, it was viewed differently, not just by culture or by people, by the consumers, but also by Lucasfilm and the people who were marketing it.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start this long and windy road and get us to, well, we're going to take you all the way up to what was announced this morning by Lucasfilm and Disney. So, but to get there, we got to start pre-Star Wars. And Collectibles started even before the movie hit the theaters. And Marvel Comics was quick to produce, of course, a movie adaptation of the films that was going to come out there in May. So in April they had Star Wars #1 drops. Now, this is a series that's going to have some longevity. It's going to run all the way until 1986. It's going to, of course, taper off, and so some of the more collectible issues are toward the end of the line there. But this also is the first time when Star Wars starts to expand the mythology. Right after issue #4, they go into a whole new story of Star Wars, where Han Solo is recruiting teams that include big green bunnies and all sorts of weird, odd things. So this is really going to be the founding of some of the early expanded universe. And of course, this is going to set a long, long tradition of having Star Wars comics as part of, not only canon, but also collectability. So started with Marvel, it's going to go to Dark Horse in the 90s, and then it's going to return just the last couple of years back home to Marvel Comics.
And I think the comics are unique amongst the Star Wars collectibles in that the product has been, it transfers with the licensees. The Marvel stories from the 70s and 80s eventually became Dark Horse properties. Dark Horse reprinted those exact comics a number of times. Now it's back with Marvel. Marvel is again reprinting their old 70s stuff, and now they're reprinting Dark Horse. So the product travels with a license, which is, I think, unique.
It is.
Now, Star Wars came out, as we all know, in May of 1977, and no one was prepared for the sensation that it was going to be. Some people, like Kenner, had an idea, but they weren't ready with actual physical plastic toys. It took a while to manufacture. So what they did is they quickly put out some very easy to manufacture things, board games, puzzles, basically things made out of cardboard. You had Fun Meals and Burger Chef, things that were quick to market and to get out there in that summer and in the early fall of '77 when there was a great demand and not a lot of product.
Yeah, very common practice with Kenner, using this type of product for any media line that they were promoting at the time.
And obviously the early bird kit at Christmas of '77, when they didn't have the toys, so they sold to a cardboard backdrop and some buttons, or I guess some stickers actually, sort of epitomizes the, let's get, paper product, easy to produce, out on the market quickly.
Quickly as possible.
It's because nobody expected it to last.
Exactly. Of course, Star Wars, the phenomenon was unexpected. But speaking of cardboard and paper products, Topps gets into the game, of course. So here in '77, they're going to take off with producing no less than 5 series over the next year alone for the Star Wars film. And these are, of course, just mostly screen caps from the film with some written text on them. But they're going to expand this line, you know, 300 cards just about instantly there in that first year. They got stickers. This is going to become another, for collectors, this is going to be another legacy line. Topps has stayed with Star Wars brand almost from the beginning, taking a little time off there in the late 80s, but you know, they're also going to be helpful to bringing Star Wars back into public knowledge in the 90s. So this is a line that starts here and continues throughout Star Wars 40th year.
I refer to Topps as the dean of Star Wars licensees because they've been in continuous possession of the license and basically producing longer than anyone else.
Exactly.
Okay, obviously early Kenner toys, they did try to get some things out before they could sculpt the famous action figures that we'll get to. So what they would do is they would repurpose some toys. You had a toothbrush from the $6 Million Man line, you put a new Star Wars back on it. The X-Wing Aces was a biplane game prior to that, so it was easy just to put an existing toy, slap a new Star Wars logo on the side and put it out. The utility kit up in the corner is something that they tried to produce. They wanted to produce. Lucasfilm put the kibosh on it because they didn't want to put Star Wars logo on anything too cheap. But a few of those did actually get out.
Oh, how times have changed.
So if you were in Canada, you might have been able to find one of those, and obviously those are very valuable today.
Yeah, the supersonic bands were something that was already being used as well. So yeah, these were all just easy to transition into, you know, capitalizing on the fame of Star Wars. But you know, these were some of the items that people collected. But when many collectors look back on what was most cherished, which was most valuable when they were young, and it goes, of course, to the Kenner Star Wars action figures. Raise your hands if you had Kenner Star Wars action figures here. There you go, look at that. That's probably 75% of the room there. Yeah, these things are, of course, well, they didn't know back then that they were printing gold with each release, but when these came out, of course, they started very small, right? We're used to very large action figure lines today, but here we started really slow. They started with, obviously, the first 12, which you see represented quite a bit. If you visited the Hasbro booth, right, who has adopted Kenner in the late 80s, they're paying respect to their roots by introducing new versions of these original 12 figures that you can see printed here on the early bird backdrop. So yeah, this line is going to be another anchor for Star Wars collecting. This is a major pastime. Hunting these down, but these started with not only figures, but then it expanded to play sets and vehicles and large size action figures. No, we don't call them dolls, they're large size action figures. So yeah, they were trying to pull in a new scale, right? Because oil was a limited commodity back in the late 70s, so we're not going to produce the large G.I. Joe size, we're going to shrink them down, kind of invent that new scale, which of course we know has become a standard for many lines today, like G.I. Joe and many other lines, of course. So they started with 12, they put out another 9 throughout the time between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, and they set up something that is just a phenomenal success, both then and today. What is the number of figures produced? I think
all told, we're into past 3,300 now.
Yeah, so this line is huge.
And obviously, you know, the Kenner viewed Star Wars property as something that would be, the toys would be moved by vehicles, as many of you know. They view play sets like the Death Star and Millennium Falcon as the primary toys, and if they were going to be, they had to be of a reasonable size, which is why they decided on a smaller scale of action figure than at the time was traditional. most people were buying Mego figures, which are 5 to 6 inches long. They made these about half that size so that they could sell reasonably sized play sets, which was what they thought the money was going to be.
So yeah, so here we have this being a kids line, right? These are kids' toys. They didn't brand them as collectibles, right? They didn't, you know, really, they were creating kids' toys with this wave of Star Wars that falls in '78, following the year of the film.
But Star Wars in its early days was a phenomenon not just with the kids. Adults loved it too. It was something brand new for them. It was exciting. So there were a lot of adult-oriented collectibles. We've all seen the video clips of people dancing to Mego Star Wars at a disco, wearing huge Star Wars belt buckles and whatnot, and you know, customizing their vans because it was the '70s and that's what you did. So there was a lot of stuff out there also not that for adults. Tankards and belt buckles and clothing, and it was not just a kid's property, which is sort of how we'd see it migrate over the coming years. But at this time, it was, you know, for the whole family to enjoy.
A collectible item or merchandise paraphernalia for everyone of any age. Now, Empire Strikes Back rolls around, and the line starts to shift a little bit. At this time, we have, well, it's a sequel property, right? So we're not quite sure, you know, what's going to happen necessarily. Can we, you know, strike gold twice? So they were a little hesitant, right? In the action figure line, they produced just a little bit more than they did the first time, but they're not all in yet. We're still focusing on kids. You can see we have the advent of the first Star Wars video game. So this video game, of course, is going to be the first in hundreds that we have today, and probably more debuting at the convention this weekend, I believe. So this is going to set the tone. Very rudimentary, of course, for 1982. Star Wars, excuse me, Star Wars Empire Strikes Back debuted on the Atari. And it's going to be on the 2600, and then it'll be shortly followed up. They reissue it on Mattel's in television in '83. So we start to see, again, attending to more a kid property.
And it's interesting to note that there was Star Wars home video games in 1982, and we did not get the first Star Wars upright coin-operated arcade game until the next year, in 1983, 6 years after the movie came out.
So, again, kids' property, so what are we going to do? We're going to provide more toys. And they're going to try something new, because again, they're apprehensive, so they're going to try a new line. And this new line is micro collection. And micro collection were die-cast little figurines that came with environments, and that was kind of the theme here, building these environments. And there was 3 major environments that they centered on that were actually released. We have the Death Star, we have the Hoth, and we have the Bespin. And these come with, you know, again, a different style of collecting, because these aren't posable action figures, but these are more diorama building. So this might be laying some roots for what people will want to do eventually down the road that collectors like to do today, but creating little scenes with your figures, right? Or not even figures, but die-cast figurines. These things, you know, are very difficult today to find pristine because they are die-cast and they chip like crazy. I know that all of mine look like they've been through a garbage disposal with how much play I had as a kid. But they were really nice, interesting. They can be interchanged with each other. Now, this line ended too soon, though. They have more plans for this. They were going to carry this line forward into Return of the Jedi, but it wasn't selling through. I know friends who said they told their parents, I want Star Wars, but I don't want Micro Machines, right? So people were still real caught up on action figures at this time. But there is a lot of canceled sets. You can see the one down here. We have the, this is the Bacta tank that would have been added on to Hoth sets, but they also had plans for the Death Star 2 and Jabba's Dungeon, and so there was some really cool sets, but this line unfortunately died too early. But if you want to see those sets, Gus and Duncan have a great book that goes over all of the produced and unproduced pieces of the micro collection line.
As the kids grew older, the kids who were in early elementary school when Star Wars came out and were into the action figures started getting older. You'll see a sort of a constant theme is that a lot of the marketing is going to follow those kids as they grow up and grow into new tastes and new fashion. Models or something like that, it's a little more complex rather than just buying a pre-built Millennium Falcon. A 12-year-old might want to make his own. There were not that many models originally in 1977, 78, 79, but by the time we got to Return of the Jedi in the early 80s, it was a full line that had developed, and that was probably its apex as far as Star Wars model kits, although they're still out there now. Early 80s, around the time of Jedi, was really its heyday, if that was something that you were into collecting.
Yeah, they really took off with models here, and again, we're starting to get toward Return of the Jedi. We're promoting this product. We know there's not an episode 7 on the agenda, so we're going to have to try to really maximize our dollar here. And so we're going to start to reach out to every possible license we could possibly do. We're going to thrust Star Wars into a place that hasn't been. Now, you know, you can almost call this the vintage era of what we had in, 99 and in 2005, and even these last couple of years where Disney starts to put, you know, Star Wars in everything and on everything. So here we're going to start expanding this line. The Return of the Jedi line goes out to places it hadn't been before, and yes, we're going to create outdoor play toys. We're going to create roller skates. We're going to put Star Wars in everyone's face, right? Full-on marketing blitz at the beginning, and it's going to extend to a myriad of products throughout this era. So this era is going to have a huge amount of content. Like when you look at the vintage action figures, you know, more than half the line seems to be Return of the Jedi toys, because the first couple movies had very limited lines. This one has a huge line. So they're really going to throw everything they can here to capture your money, to capture your interest, because Star Wars is up in the air.
Well, you also have to look at Star Wars as a property and how it was perceived in the first 3 movies. Nobody expected anything in 77. By 80, okay, we knew Star Wars was a hit. This is a sequel. Sequels had not traditionally been a big deal. If there had never been a really, really successful licensing effort for a movie before Star Wars, there obviously had not been a sequel that was well marketed. They didn't know what to expect they'd get, but nonetheless, it remained popular. So by the time Jedi rolled around in 83, it was a license, it was a reliable license. So you had more people willing to take risks on movie properties that might not have been somebody who looked at 6 or 3 years prior to that.
But again, now we're dealing though with years later, right? What started a phenomenon in 77, now we're about 7 years out, 83. Where are we going to go? Those kids are aging out, so we need to tap into new audiences.
And you get the first Star Wars television spin-offs, which are aimed at young kids, trying to integrate people who were the age of, you know, people who were 5 or 6 or 7 when the first movie came out. Now we're trying to get the next generation, their younger siblings. So you had 2 television series, you had Ewoks and Droids. Ewoks was more popular overseas and ran for a 2nd season. There were some toys. It was a short-lived line. We're talking a dozen figures across both the cloud. Custom action, a few action figures, a few vehicles to go along with them. They lasted on the market only for a year. But again, trying to find a new audience as the original Star Wars audience was growing up.
And also, in order to capture some more of that Star Wars magic, you know, Kenner at this time was trying to figure out where to go forward. You know, if these animated shows didn't hit, they started then creating their own content. And so they actually pitched a whole line and concept to Lucasfilm, to George, saying, hey, we got this idea. It's called The Epic Continues. And it's where Luke goes on to do this, Vader does this, we have a new villain, and he does this, and they created all this great concept art, which Hasbro actually has on display some of that concept pieces in their booth today, if you want to learn more about The Epic Continues. And George and Lucasfilm said, no, we're okay to let the line die or lie for now. So Kenner had plans to keep going, but it wasn't meant to be. So we enter the Dark Age. The Dark Age. There's not a lot going on in Star Wars over the next few years.
I mean, it's traditionally written off that the Star Wars generation was now in high school. They didn't care about that things. They had other priorities. That might have been true. I know it wasn't my case, but there were a couple of products that were made on the market, role-playing games, which are targeted again at that age, at the late teens, mid-teens, the people who might still have an interest in Star Wars. And this actually, it's important to note that West End Games role-playing game, although I was into it, that's the source of a lot of the background material that we have now that we take for granted about some of these characters and their names and their backgrounds. It really did flesh out the universe at a time when nobody else was doing anything with it.
Yeah, true. This is where you're going to see a lot of development of what we have commonplace, right? Modern people know, modern fans and collectors know the difference between Forlong and Zuckuss now, but for those who grew up vintage, it was backwards, and so this starts to set a lot of those things, either correct them or put them in play. This becomes the basis of, what canon is built around almost, with the names of cities and ships and parts and all sorts of stuff. So this is what you have in the Dark Age of Star Wars, the dark times. But it, of course, it doesn't come without an anniversary.
Yeah, we're in the 40th anniversary now. Well, this was the 10th anniversary, and that's about all you could get. Most of it was advertised in a flyer that came with the, if you bought the Star Wars trilogy on VHS in 1987, it would come with a little slip inside that basically said, hey, this film's 10 years old, order a coffee mug from Lucasfilm, or get this poster. There was a celebration that year. It was a Star Wars convention. It wasn't called Celebration, obviously. But that was, it was 10 years old and nobody really knew where it was going. There hadn't been a movie in 2 years at that point, or 4 years, excuse me. And there was no plans for a new movie to come out, so, there really wasn't anything to promote. And then in the 1990s, things really began to turn around. Obviously, we all know, or many of us know, about the Thrawn trilogy of novels that started coming out, I guess, in 90, 91?
Yeah.
And about the same time, Dark Horse got the comic book license. Marvel hadn't been publishing books for about 4 or 5 years. Dark Horse took the license and started producing new stories, beginning with the Dark Empire books. They were all really well received. You now have a fan base that's in college and is sort of ready to re-embrace Star Wars after having been away for a while. Topps came out with a Star Wars Galaxy series, which was original art based on the movies and also on some of the expanded universe stuff eventually. This line went on for 20 years practically, several different series, all with original art. They had a magazine at the time trying to promote Star Wars collecting in general. And it really was a revival.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people it was Star Wars Topps magazine here, Star Wars Galaxy or Collector, that really ignited people's views of this stuff now as collectibles, right? These as people who are interested in the history and the longevity and the background behind these lines, because up until then it was just kind of kids' toys that kind of fell into nowhere because people became distracted in the 80s with Mask and G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man. There's lots of other competition in the 80s. But this is the time when people get back and start to become, start to poke at that nostalgia, poke at that historical look, and, oh, is this really collectible? Does this have value? You want this too? You had that? Those conversations start to pop up, and then, we have, the collecting culture starting to be written about in this magazine by Topps. Now, another thing here that happens in the early 90s is we have one of our first real crossover lines, right? Micro Machines became very popular in Star Wars, but they were popular before Star Wars. They had their own line of little cars, and they had those commercials where the guy talked really fast and he had to go to the suburban plant. you know? And so Micro Machines is already established property that wasn't owned by Kenner, you know, a major Star Wars licensee. And so this is the first time they kind of mesh up those licenses, right? So a new Micro Machines is now going to make Star Wars. So this line becomes really popular. It's a huge line when it came out in the 90s. It had lots of different types of sets. You had figure packs, you had play sets, you had transforming heads that had scenes inside. So here Star Wars starts to introduce a whole new line. You know, I'll use the word collectibles lightly because, you know, these aren't highly collectible today, you know. There are certain niche groups, you know, I happen to have almost a complete set of Micro Machines, but I'm a weirdo, so, but you also have other licenses like Bend-Ems starting to pop up, and you know, this is the first return to somewhat of a type of action figure with an infinity amount of articulation. You have Hasbro come up with a larger scale of die-cast, right? So we're starting to push more toys now that people are kind of rediscovering that collecting passion again.
And it's, you know, in collecting terminology, obviously many of you know this, this is sort of the demarcation between vintage and modern. The stuff that started coming out in 93, 94 is the modern Star Wars collectible, even though we're talking now 20, 25 years old. But you know, compared to, you know, the original stuff, obviously there was that huge gap. And this is, we're now getting into what the collectors consider modern.
Or maybe neoclassic.
No, let's not. Okay, and obviously we've got the big bomb that dropped in 1995 was the Power of the Force 2 collection. The Power of the Force 1 was the line of figures that came out in 1984 and 85, following Return of the Jedi, that still consisted of Return of the Jedi characters, with one exception. Power of the Force 2 was theoretically a continuation of that line 10 years later, but obviously it isn't really, it's modern figures. It became a huge line. It was a huge success. The figures were hard to find for over a year, almost impossible to find. As with 1977, Kenner, which is now part of Hasbro at this point, did not anticipate the demand. There were only a few figures for a while. The line didn't really start blowing up in numbers of characters for about 2 years. Like I said, very hard to find, very valuable on the secondary market. You're now at the time when the internet's becoming popular, so people are learning about collectible new releases and variations and trading and making deals on the internet. The whole collecting culture was really taking modern, becoming a modern entity at this point, and this line had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and this line now, of course, looking back on, a lot of people have some issues with, because they expected the value of the vintage figures to be replicated in the value of this line, especially because it was kind of rare at first, but, you know, over time we got better versions of all these figures, and people look back on these, you know, this Arnold Schwarzenegger version of Luke Skywalker here, and they, you know, they don't care for it, but then again, I think this line gets a little bit of a bad rep, because this was the style of action figures, period, at this time. If you looked at the Antonio Banderas release of Zorro, he looks like he's, you know, Conan the Barbarian when his action figure came out, right? And G.I. Joe started a new line of G.I. Joe Extreme, and they were bought. And so this line was really, really, it's a great line, but it definitely has a little bit of a stigma with collectors.
And by 97, they had corrected that as the market demanded more realistic looking figures. You know, they adapted. Star Wars figures were always subject to the style and the trends of the day, up to this point, up until today.
And that takes us to Shadows of the Empire. Now, Shadows of the Empire is a unique event because it essentially was an orchestrated release across multiple properties. You got everything from Hasbro and Dark Horse and Galoob and soundtracks and trading cards and novels. So it was everything associated with the film, but without the film. So they really did a nice job. They unified the idea of, you know, marketing one concept across all their brands. You know, prior to this, everyone had done their own things. right? Del Rey let out their books and their stories, and Hasbro created their figures, and Topps created their cards. Now, for the first time, they're all on the same page. This is pretty common today, but this is kind of where it starts, this unified campaign. This is going to be a very small action figure line, but it's going to be very large in regards to all the different merchandise that was produced for this non-movie event.
And it told one story, but they divided it up, so you had the novel that focused on one thing, comic book told the story from a different point of view, and the video game, again, told that story from the point of view of another character. But I think that the lasting legacy of Shadows of the Empire is probably that it gave us the term peg warmer. Because these were really the first action figures that did not move off of the pegs. And then in 1997, we got, for better or worse, the special editions. In January of 1997, Star Wars Empire came out the next month, and Jedi came out in March. In addition to having the films, which again, nobody expected them to be as popular as they were in re-release. It was the 20th anniversary, obviously, of Star Wars. Made a huge amount of money, and both of the sequels did as well. They had to push them back because they were all doing so well in the theaters. They wanted to give them more time. So the action figure for Return of the Jedi that you got if you went on opening night, it's got the wrong date on the package because the release date was pushed back because Empire was doing better than people had anticipated. But you did have food premiums and tie-ins and mail-aways for action figures, new soundtracks. So I mean, it was an event, but it wasn't a huge event.
And of course, we know what they're doing on the background of Lucasfilm. They're preparing. We call this prequel prep. And one of the reasons for the special edition was to see, can we do CG real characters? They're laying the tracks for, Jar Jar and other characters that are going to, reign supreme in these prequel era that's coming up. Now, one of the things that really blew up at this time too, because people have gotten a collecting bug for Star Wars all over again, is now exclusives. And I know we're all pulling our hair out even today trying to get some of these exclusives, standing in line at 6 a.m. Anybody in here get the X-Wing loot that Hasbro's putting out? Oh, I got a couple hands. Those are the people you want to mug later. Now, the exclusives is the name of the game today, but this is where it really starts to hit a huge stride. The 12-inch line of dolls, or large action figures, that they had at this time, everyone had an exclusive. Every major retailer, Toys R Us, KB's, FAO Schwartz.
Many places that don't exist now.
Yes.
Kids
are like, what's a KB?
KB servers merchandise.
Yep.
It really was unprecedented. I mean, it had never been like that, and it never has been again since.
True.
In terms of driving to specific retailers to get things.
And it wasn't just the 12-inch Hasbro line, it was other properties. Galoob had Micro Machines, the action figures, the Action Fleet, the Epic Force, Play-Doh. Yes, everywhere you look, somebody had exclusive content that they wanted you to go grab. So, interesting time, 97.
And then in 1999, we got Star Wars Legos, which are now a huge part of the collectible landscape. 1999, this was the first time that Lego produced a licensed property. Prior to that, all Lego sets were just homemade in Denmark or wherever they designed Legos. But then they started branding with Star Wars. Prior to the prequels, the first sets were original trilogy sets that came out in late February, early March of 1999, with several basic sets. And if you look at them now and you compare them to what you see at the Lego stores, of course there weren't Lego stores back then, they look very rudimentary. They used the existing bricks. They didn't have any specially designed bricks. So you look at some of the Episode 1 figures that came out in May of that year, and they don't look anything like what they're supposed to. But for what became a huge line for Star Wars and a huge line for Lego, obviously, that are still producing them today, this is where it started.
Yeah, this is, like it says, Lego's now #1 toy retailer in the world. But Star Wars is the one that kind of lifted them out of almost bankruptcy. So this is a huge, huge win for both collectors and the Lego company. Midnight Madness. Anybody here at Midnight Madness 99? All right, so for those who are more modern collectors, you've heard of the last couple of years, Force Friday. Well, this was the original Force Friday. This is when all the toys were launched for Midnight Madness. Took place during episode Celebration 1, right? And this was headed by Toys R Us, and this was a major night. I actually was so into Star Wars collecting at this point, I actually went and took a job at Toys R Us because I was like, I'm tired of hunting, I'm tired of wasting gas, I'm just a college kid, why don't I go work at Toys R Us and let the figures come to me? So I was actually in the building for Toys R Us Midnight Madness #1, and all the stories you hear, they are correct. This launch of these figures here, people just went crazy about it. I knew multiple people that rushed into the store. We had to fill old little kiddie swimming pools full of figures because collectors would come in, they don't even want them off the pegs, and they would stack them as tall as they were. Like all Darth Maul. Darth Maul was the hottest thing on one day on planet Earth. It was Darth Maul. But this was, yes, a massive, massive coordinated launch of product which had never been done before. And it was met with great, great success.
But again, the Midnight Madness aspect of Midnight Madness was only at Toys R Us.
Correct.
It was at all the other retailers the next morning. And in all seriousness, and I talk about it, I'll laugh about it now because I saw later everything turned out all right. At this Midnight Madness at the Toys R Us that I was at in Raleigh, North Carolina, a child was actually trampled. I mean, he was ahead of me in line. I saw him go down, and the whole mass of people, went over. I saw him later on that evening, winding his way through to get to the action figures, so he was okay. But I mean, it was every good and bad thing you can picture about the craziness of Star Wars collecting was there that night. That's how big people thought Episode 1 was going to be, and how big it was at the time.
Speaking of massive hysteria and massive lines, we have a bonus slide.
So that's Star Wars Celebration 1. That, the main stage there looks a little, about as sophisticated as this stage. We don't have the mud, we don't have the tents, but, we've come a long way in whatever it's been, 25 years.
Wow.
50.
All right, so between the prequels, it's interesting, as exciting as people were about Episode 1, when it came to some of the toy properties, they were like, oh, don't forget about the original trilogy. And so the very next line that happened in 2000, following 99's release of Episode 1, was almost an entire original trilogy-centric line. This was the Power of the Jedi. You could see that they put Vader on it. They shrunk Episode 1, Obi-Wan, down a little bit. All the vehicles that they produced, they were all original trilogy. They only did 2 out of 11 12-inch figures that were based on prequels. So it was kind of a, hey, let's make sure we keep, people went crazy for Episode 1. People ended up buying a lot of extra stuff they didn't want. Let's kind of let's get the original trilogy. And of course, Episode 1 was met with mixed reviews. And so let's just try to hold on to those original trilogy guys.
The early 2000s was also sort of the era of the extreme action figure with realistic action poses, less posability, more sort of statue for your desk. McFarlane figures are sort of the typical thing that people think about. And here again is Star Wars following a trend. And this is something we're going to see more and more of as we come along, rather than creating a new niche, the 3 3/4 inch figure or what have you. They're following the market brand. So we had the Star Wars Unleashed line that began in 2002 and ran for about 5 years. At the end, it went from an oversized line to a very small line with the same name, but again, pre-posed figures. It was just an effort by Hasbro to try to find where the market is and try to put Star Wars at that place. So if I want an extreme action figure for my desk at work or at wherever, well, I'll get the Star Wars one. Also, we put around the edge all of the video games that were released in 2000, between Episode 2 and Episode 3. I think this was sort of the heyday of Star Wars. I don't think there's another period where we got that many games in such a concentrated period. So again, it's not just toys on the shelves, it's games at home and for the people who are more into you know, as society developed more towards video gaming rather than traditional physical gaming.
We have our next major unified marketing campaign that happened, and this one took place between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and it was called Clone Wars. No "the" in front of it, it's just Clone Wars. And this is based on new animated property, little snippets, micro episodes as they were, that were based on some of the adventures that Yoda and Mace Windu and guys had during the Clone Wars. And this was, like Shadows of the Empire, spread across comic books, novels, action figures, you name it, they had some tie-in to this Clone Wars property. So you see Lucasfilm going back to the well and looking at what worked before when they didn't have a film directly to promote.
We always think Star Wars is sort of a trailblazer in a lot of things and creates a new bunch of markets. Home video is somewhere where Star Wars has always lagged. It was not available on VHS or Beta or any way for a home consumer to get the original 1977 movie until 1982, 5 years later. Empire was 4 years after Empire came out, it was available on home video. So it was not, that was the way the market worked back then, but it was also sort of an extra drag. We saw the same thing with Blu-ray, where the Star Wars on home video and high def. It took a while for them to bring it out. DVD was another thing like that. It did not come out, the Star Wars original trilogy did not come out on DVD until 2004. Again, it was a new edition of the film, different even than the special editions. And they rolled that into what was the original trilogy collection, where Hasbro and Lego and a number of the other marketers just sort of, in the run-up to episode 3, we had one last burst of original trilogy marketing, because 2005 was all going to be focused on episode 3.
Yeah, so episode 5, you know, again, Star Wars is going into that question mark territory, right? After Revenge of the Sith drops, what's next? So let's expand the license again, and now this time it's like Lucasfilm challenged licensees to be creative with the line. They're like, now let's just not put Star Wars on your M&M's package. I want you to create M&M characters that are Star Wars. And then send those over to Hasbro and let them make figures to sell people. And, you know, Target, you don't just get a Vader, let's put a red sheen on him and make it exclusive to your place. And, you know, so they had to be really creative. Even fast food toys, you know, they had to make tons of them, right? So they're really, really challenging their fans to be creative with a property who could be going dormant again. We don't know.
Also in the early 2000s, and especially by the middle of the decade, suddenly retailers realized that Star Wars fans are probably in their 30s, late 30s even at this point, and they may have money that they want to spend on Star Wars, more than $5 for action figures. So we had an explosion of high-end retailers. This is something that we had in the 90s and even before that, but it really came into prominence around the time of Revenge of the Sith, where you started being able to buy mini busts or full-size busts or prop replicas of real intricate detail, things that would cost not just hundreds of dollars, but thousands of dollars, and were made in, you know, very limited quantities. But there was a market for them. They sold, and these are lines that have continued for years, and some have continued to this day. Retailers like Sideshow, Gentle Giant, at the time Master Replicas, which has evolved into EFX. People who you can go to see on the floor now that are still, you know, meeting this demand, which still exists.
So, Star Wars enters that question mark area I was talking about, but what happens is we have an anniversary. So, this is now, we're getting close to where we are now. 10 years ago, we celebrated the 30th anniversary, and that was seen represented in lines. We had a celebration that wasn't based on the movie for the first time, right? That's Celebration 4. So, you know, the commemorative stamps. We have an action figure line that wants to tap into the length of, you know, the history of Star Wars action figures and even Star Wars property. We had concept figures. Ralph McQuarrie figures were popular during this line. We brought back coins, which were popular in the vintage line. So you had figures from the Complete Saga being put out here in this figure. We have commemorative Dark Horse that starts to reprint you know, really nice volumes of things. So people wanted to celebrate Star Wars in 2007, and you know what? Since there was no movie, let's throw a lot of energy and time into it, because we could, because we got nothing else going on right now. This was before the animated series began.
And that came along in 2008. We learned about it in 2007. 2008, we got The Clone Wars, which is the Clone Wars you're probably more familiar with. It ran for 5 seasons. Sixth season on Netflix, right. And this was the first time that Hasbro, again, sort of the big elephant as far as Star Wars collecting goes, bifurcated the line. You had a line of animated children's-style figures and toys for the television series. They were on the pegs next to the traditional, highly articulated at the time action figures that were geared more for the traditional collector. And this is something that we've lived with since that time. You'll have different styles, different price points, different approaches to figures on the shelves at the same time.
In 2010, we hit full steam on nostalgia for the vintage era. And we see a lot of lines go to the vintage style, the black packaging. We have Hasbro do an entire massively successful line of vintage action figure inspired packaging. New figures, but kind of old card backs. You have Gentle Giants jumping in. You see the release of the Blu-ray that has just an amazing amount of nostalgia built into the content that is built into that Blu-ray release. So Star Wars hits full steam on nostalgia, and this starts to jack everybody's old toy prices up at this era.
This was also a time, again, when Hasbro and the other manufacturers out there trying to, and Lucasfilm in particular, trying to figure out what are we going to do with Star Wars. This is before the Disney acquisition. There are no new movies on the horizon. Clone Wars has now been on for several years and is sort of running its run. The big ideas are, okay, well, we'll re-release the six existing films in 3D, one a year over a period of time, and then that schedule changed and was eventually scrapped with only episode 1 being released in theaters. So we had another Midnight Madness like 1999 style blitz for The Phantom Menace. But at the same time, we had experiments and new things like fighter pods, which were tiny little action figures. We were going to get Angry Birds crossovers. We were getting lots of licenses, but no particular focus, because nobody really knew where the franchise was going in the first 10 months of 2012.
And then the mouse arrives. George Lucas announces the sale of Lucasfilm and the Star Wars properties to go with that to Disney, and the Disney era begins. Disney first begins, which seemed like a really bad start for many of us, by canceling the 3D releases, the Clone Wars, the live-action series, the expanded universe. They capped that canon. They shelved the entire animated series called Detours, the major video game 1313. I mean, just massive cuts, because they wanted to start fresh with this new $4.2 billion property they just purchased. And so we have stopgaps. And they were going to go with this type of Build-A-Droid line, but they put a stop to that. And they wanted to throw out a collector line. And thus begins the 6-inch Black Series line, which is going to be the focus of a lot of collectors. Are going to shift focus to this now new scale of Star Wars action figure that's very popular today.
Here's just sort of a quick showing of the different scales that we've had over the years. Just it's been all over the map, anywhere from this big to 4 feet tall. So we've been everywhere in the world with Star Wars, size-wise. The big figs or something like that we're talking about, where they're trying. Disney is giving out the license and saying, okay, Hasbro, you've got action figures that size, you've got 6-inch, but you're not the only game in town. So we're going to create these huge, big figures. We're going to create other lines of about the same size that exists, but just different enough that we can justify the license. This is Disney really trying to push Star Wars. If you want to buy a Star Wars license, Disney is looking like they're going to try to find a way to get you into the mix.
And not only are they going to get you in the mix, Disney's going to nominate themselves. So here you see them in 2005 create their own competition to the popular 6-inch Black Series that Hasbro putting out with these Elite figures, which are about 6-inch. They're more 7-inch in scale, but the difference between these and the Hasbro ones is these are die-cast, so they are adding something different. But you know, Disney is creating competition to sell more stuff. I mean, Disney's for years been making Star Wars themed cars, but now they gave the license also to Mattel. Mattel can make now Star Wars themed cars, competing with their own racer brand. So Disney is starting to flood that license out to anybody and everybody.
And that includes a lot of international licensees. Japan seems to have a whole other world of Star Wars collectibles that people are now getting into more and more, and we're finding them imported. Although they're not officially licensed here, you won't find them down on the floor. You go online, you'll find retailers who are willing to sell you different versions of Star Wars figures at different price points that are filling needs that aren't currently marketed to the U.S. within the U.S. So it really remains an international property despite the U.S. focus.
True. We have Force Awakens hit, and we call this one What's Old is New Again, because with Force Awakens they tap into a lot of old concepts, a lot of dead lines. Titaniums, Galactic Heroes, Micro Machines all reemerge during this time period of Force Awakens. They're going to introduce one new piece that was highly collectible for a little while. It was called the SWCO, right? But other than that, most everything that came out, action figures, titaniums, and stuff, we've all seen before. So it was an interesting time for collectors, going back to lines they hadn't seen for a while.
And it appeared, we've learned with Rogue One that that's going to be a process that's going to be repeated. Rogue One was marketed very similarly to the way they marketed The Force Awakens. The same toys, the same retailers, the same exclusives, the same lines, the same
release dates,
same marketing focus. Just they take The Force Awakens out, plug in Rogue One, and they're good to go. It's become a pre-made marketing property, and there's no reason to expect that it's going to be any different this fall with The Last Jedi.
And that brings us to what we're all here for this convention, the 40th anniversary. We made it through 40 years of collecting, and of course, vintage again is going back to the roots, right? George Lucas is downstairs on stage, right? Bringing back the maker, looking at Star Wars from the beginning, right? Many lines. Hot Wheels has a a vintage 40th anniversary car. Hasbro does. Gentle Giant does. They're all now. We have a unified branding campaign, the 40th anniversary, that's going across all lines. And we also have everyone going back to the start. So the focus, A New Hope galore, is taking place at this convention.
So that's sort of summary of the last 40 years. It's been quite a ride. We don't know where it's going, but we've got pretty good ideas based on, like I said, the way that Disney seems to be wanting to put the franchise forward, going forward. And obviously, we're here for 4 days with crazy lines. It's not going to be dying anytime. We'll probably be here for 50 for 50 and celebration, whatever. So,
and we even, as of this morning, we have a new property, a new media property to put to this slide. They announced at midnight, Forces of Destiny, a whole new animated line featuring the females of Star Wars universe, a new animated series that's going to be supported by not only Hasbro, which has figures already down on display, but other lines as well. So Star Wars is live, it's thriving.
Spin-off movies every year.
Yep.
It's going to be nuts.
Well, we want to thank you. If you want to know more about what Matt and I do, again, I'm Jake Stevens. I run the website from forlondezuckus.com. We do nothing but Star Wars action figures there. I'm also the host of the co-host of the weekly podcast, Toy Run, the Star Wars Action Figure Cast. Who knew you can talk about Star Wars action figures every week? I don't know how, but you can. I'm also on the Galaxy of Toys podcast, and you can find Matt there as well.
And I'm Matt Fox, and I do This Week in Star Wars, which is a podcast I've been doing for about 6 years now. From time to time, and thanks so much for coming out, and I hope you have a great show.
We got swag and questions in the collector's social.
If you have any questions, questions, we'll be in the social room like Gus said. I've got swag, Gus has swag, come on over and get that after you get your tots.